The roar of the crowd was like thunder rolling through the heart of Britain. People did not just gather, they surged into the streets as if pulled by one unstoppable force. The sound of thousands chanting in unison shook the air and echoed across the city. It was not an ordinary protest. It was not another weekend march with placards and speeches. This was something much bigger, something that would etch itself into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. At the centre of it all stood a man who has divided opinion, but on this day, he held the attention of millions. Tommy Robinson. And his words would leave Keir Starmer with a humiliation so public, so sharp, that it spread like wildfire across the nation. From the very first moment, there was electricity in the air. People could feel that history was about to unfold. Men, women, and young people travelled from every corner of the country to stand together in one voice. The numbers grew by the hour, turning streets into rivers of humanity. Flags were lifted high, banners stretched as far as the eye could see, and chants rolled forward in waves. It was a scene of unity that politicians rarely face, a scene that Keir Starmer, the man at the centre of the storm, could not ignore. This was called the Unite the Kingdom protest, and its name carried power. At a time when many believe Britain is divided, when trust in leaders has collapsed, here was a gathering that promised to break silence and show force. People were angry, yes, but they were also determined. They had not come to quietly disagree. They had come to roar, to send a message so loud that even the walls of Parliament could not contain it. And in the middle of this fury stood Starmer's biggest critic, ready to say the words others fear to speak. The moment was set up like a showdown. On one side, the establishment, with Starmer as its face. On the other, a crowd swelling into the tens of thousands hanging on the voice of one man. Tommy Robinson knew what he was about to say would cause shockwaves. He knew that once the words left his mouth, there would be no taking them back. And he was ready for it. As the chanting reached its highest pitch, a hush fell over the masses, almost unnatural in its suddenness. It was the silence before a storm, the silence of thousands waiting to hear the spark that would ignite the day. And then it came. Robinson began to speak. His voice was not calm or polite. It was fierce, unyielding, carrying years of frustration that mirrored the anger of those in front of him. Every word carried weight. Every sentence struck like a hammer against the fragile glass of the political order. Keir Starmer, sitting far away, could not have been prepared for the humiliation that was coming. For in that moment, Robinson was not just speaking for himself. He was voicing the fury of a nation that felt ignored, betrayed, and silenced. Millions at the protest, and millions more watching online, were about to witness a speech that would echo far beyond that single day. This was not the language of compromise. This was not the soft tone of political debate. This was raw, blunt, and brutal. It was the kind of speech that makes allies cheer and opponents tremble. And it would soon become clear that Starmer was the direct target, with no escape from the sting of every line. In the space of a few minutes, Robinson would strip away the image Starmer tries so hard to project. He would turn him from a leader into a figure of mockery, and he would do it in front of a sea of people that looked like an unstoppable wave. The day had only begun, yet the humiliation of Keir Starmer had already been sealed. His silence in the face of Robinson's attack would speak louder than any defence he could ever attempt. And as the cameras rolled, as the chants echoed, one truth became undeniable. Britain was watching, and the man they were watching was about to turn politics upside down. The streets were alive with a force that could not be ignored. From the early morning hours, thousands poured in from towns, cities, and villages across the country. They came by train, by car, and on foot, each one carrying the same determination: to stand shoulder to shoulder with others who felt that Britain had reached a breaking point. By midday, the numbers had swelled into the kind of crowd that few could remember seeing in recent years. Everywhere you looked, people were packed together, waving flags, holding banners, and chanting with one voice. It was not just a protest, it was a movement made visible, a nation showing its anger and unity in the same breath. The air itself seemed heavier, charged with emotion. Families brought their children, young people carried signs with bold words, older men and women stood tall, many saying they had not joined a march in decades but felt they had no choice now. The chants came in waves, sometimes echoing down the streets with names of leaders, other times roaring with simple messages like, "We will not be silent." The sound was deafening, but in that deafness lay the strength of the people. It was not chaos, it was purpose. The Unite the Kingdom protest was no accident. It had been building for weeks, whispered in conversations, organised across groups, shared online until it turned into a tidal wave that no one could stop. And when the day arrived, the turnout exceeded every prediction. What was expected to be a few thousand swelled into tens of thousands. Reports even suggested that millions tuned in online to watch what would unfold. The scale itself told a story. People were tired of empty words from leaders. They wanted to show their power in numbers. At the centre of this anger was one man, Keir Starmer. To many in the crowd, he symbolised everything that had gone wrong with the political system. They saw him not as a leader, but as a man who had failed to listen, failed to act, failed to represent the people. His polished speeches and calm tone meant nothing to those who believed he was out of touch with real Britain. And so, when thousands gathered under the banner of unity, it was also a banner of resistance against him. Everywhere you turned, signs and banners carried messages directed at the establishment. Some were blunt, others creative, but all carried the same demand: accountability. And hovering above all of this, in chants and whispers, was the expectation of hearing Tommy Robinson speak. People knew he would not hold back. They knew he would say the things others were too afraid to say. And they knew that Starmer would be the main target. The weather could have turned sour, the day could have been interrupted by setbacks, but nothing would have stopped this crowd. The energy was unstoppable, like a river bursting through a dam. Even those who had never supported Robinson before now found themselves curious, waiting to hear his words. This was no longer about one man. This was about a feeling that had grown across the nation, a feeling that leaders were failing and that someone had to call them out in front of everyone. As the hours passed, the anticipation grew sharper. Each chant seemed louder than the one before. Each speech leading up to Robinson only heightened the hunger in the crowd. And when people finally realised he was about to appear, an electricity shot through them. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The sheer expectation was overwhelming. The stage was not just set for a speech. It was set for a moment that would humiliate Keir Starmer in a way no opponent in Parliament ever could. The scene was now alive, waiting for the strike. Britain was ready. The crowd was ready. And in just moments, Tommy Robinson would step forward to turn that energy into an attack that would echo through politics for years to come. The noise of the crowd rolled like waves crashing against a cliff, unstoppable and growing in strength with every passing second. People had been waiting for this exact moment since the morning, and now it was finally here. The expectation hung heavy in the air, a kind of tension that made hearts race and voices rise. All eyes turned to the stage as the announcement spread through the masses. Tommy Robinson was about to speak. The reaction was instant, a roar of voices so loud that it seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. It was not just excitement, it was release. After hours of marching, chanting, and waiting, the moment had come. Tommy Robinson walked into view, and the atmosphere changed in a heartbeat. The crowd surged forward as if pulled by an invisible thread. Thousands of hands raised, flags shaking wildly, and chants of his name bursting out from every corner. The air was electric, alive with energy that only grows when people believe they are part of something bigger than themselves. For many in the crowd, this was not just a protest anymore. It was history unfolding in real time. Robinson's presence had a weight to it. He was not dressed like a politician, not polished or scripted like the men and women in Parliament. He was raw, direct, and unfiltered, and that was exactly what drew the people to him. He looked into the crowd, scanning faces, seeing the thousands who had placed their hopes in this moment. He paused before speaking, and in that pause, silence spread like wildfire, thousands holding their breath in anticipation. That silence said everything. People were hungry for words that matched their anger, words that did not bend or soften. They wanted truth, and they expected Robinson to deliver it. The scale of the crowd was almost impossible to grasp. Stretching back as far as the eye could see, men, women, and families stood shoulder to shoulder, pressing forward to catch every word. Phones were raised high, ready to record the moment that would ripple across the internet within minutes. And Robinson knew it. He was not just speaking to those in front of him. He was speaking to millions watching from home, millions who would see clips shared across social media before the day was done. Every word would be replayed, every line dissected, and he was prepared for it. As Robinson prepared to speak, chants broke out once more, this time so unified that they rolled like thunder. It was not chaos, it was a demand. A demand for someone to finally say what needed to be said, to strip away the mask of the political elite, and call out the failures that had been ignored for too long. The sound of it was overwhelming, a deafening reminder that this crowd was not here by accident. They had come because they were tired of silence, tired of being dismissed, and tired of leaders who treated them as background noise. And so, when Robinson finally raised his voice, it cut through the air like a blade. The first words were met with cheers so fierce they almost drowned him out. But he pressed forward, his tone sharp and steady, refusing to soften or compromise. The crowd answered him with roars, as though each sentence struck directly at the heart of their frustration. His presence on that stage was not polished, not refined, but it was powerful. And that power came from connection, from speaking the kind of raw truth that people had long felt, but rarely heard echoed so boldly in public. Robinson's focus was clear. He was not there to give a safe, easy speech. He was there to call out Keir Starmer by name, to point at the failures of leadership that had left so many disillusioned. He built tension with each line, pushing the crowd to a fever pitch, driving the point home that this was not just politics. This was a fight for the soul of the country. And in that moment, standing before tens of thousands of voices, he knew he had the platform to deliver a blow that Starmer would feel even from a distance. The chants grew louder still, mixing with Robinson's words, creating a storm of noise that no one in Britain could ignore. Cameras rolled, phones streamed, and across the city, echoes of the protest carried into homes and businesses. The entire nation was watching, whether they wanted to or not. And as Robinson stood on that stage, ready to unleash his full attack on Keir Starmer, one truth became undeniable. This was not just another speech. This was the moment the protest had been building toward. The silence of the people had ended, and their chosen voice was about to strike. When Tommy Robinson finally turned his words toward Keir Starmer, the tone shifted from anticipation to raw confrontation. There was no hesitation, no polite lead-in, and no carefully crafted political language. His voice rang with force, cutting through the air like steel. This was not going to be the kind of criticism that Starmer was used to from the benches of Parliament or from television interviews. This was something far more brutal. Robinson called him out directly, and he did it in front of a sea of people who were desperate to hear someone finally say what they had been feeling for years. He accused Starmer of betrayal, accusing him of turning his back on the very people he was supposed to represent. Robinson spoke of promises made and broken, of words polished for cameras but empty in reality. Each sentence carried anger but also conviction, and every time he delivered a blow, the crowd answered with roars that made the air vibrate. Robinson made it clear that Starmer was not simply failing as a leader, he was failing as a man of the people. In that moment, Starmer's carefully built image of control and authority crumbled in front of millions. Robinson painted Starmer as a figure who had chosen the establishment over the nation, a man more interested in protecting his political career than in protecting the ordinary citizen. He spoke about how Britain's working class had been left abandoned, how ordinary voices had been silenced, and how Starmer had allowed it to happen under his watch. These were not abstract accusations. They were personal, sharp, and delivered with the kind of clarity that made them impossible to ignore. The crowd responded with chants that carried Starmer's name, but not in support. Instead, his name was shouted as a symbol of failure, a chant that sounded more like an indictment than a rally cry. As Robinson spoke, the atmosphere grew heavier. His words carried the kind of anger that comes from years of frustration, but they also carried precision. He was not rambling. He was targeting, striking line after line directly at Starmer's credibility. He accused him of cowardice, of hiding behind polished speeches while ordinary people struggled. He accused him of being blind to the pain of the people standing right there in the streets. And he accused him of treating the British people as if they were expendable, as if their concerns were nothing more than noise to be ignored. Each accusation landed harder than the one before. The crowd's response grew wilder, a wall of sound that felt almost uncontrollable. Some raised fists in the air, others shouted along with Robinson's words, repeating them like a chorus. In that storm of voices, Starmer's political power looked paper-thin. It was as though Robinson had torn away the mask and forced the entire country to see the man behind it, a leader who, in their eyes, had failed. Robinson's tone grew sharper still as he declared that Starmer had no moral authority left to lead. He said the people had already stripped it from him, that this protest itself was proof of it. He told the crowd that Britain was awake now, that no amount of political spin or media coverage could erase what they were seeing and feeling in that moment. The words carried a finality to them, as though this was not simply a criticism, but a judgment. The verdict had been delivered, and it was humiliation. Starmer was not on that stage to defend himself, but perhaps that made the humiliation even deeper. He was not present to interrupt, not able to soften the blow, not able to twist the narrative with rehearsed lines. Instead, he was forced to remain silent, while Robinson's words spread like wildfire across the crowd and beyond. Clips of the attack were already being recorded, already being streamed, already being shared. The humiliation was not limited to the people in front of Robinson. It was exploding across the nation in real time. By the time Robinson finished his direct attack, the crowd was on fire with energy. They cheered, they shouted, they waved their banners high. It was not just approval, it was catharsis. They felt someone had finally spoken for them, finally said what they could not say in the halls of power. And in doing so, Robinson had turned Starmer from a distant leader into a public target of ridicule. This was not just criticism. It was brutal, relentless, and unforgettable. It was the kind of humiliation that would not be erased by tomorrow's headlines or next week's speeches. It was now etched into the memory of all who witnessed it, etched into the videos that would circulate endlessly online, etched into the chants that still echoed as Robinson stepped back. For Keir Starmer, this was not just an attack. It was the moment his authority was shattered in front of millions.